Hey, my friends. This is Ryan, and welcome back to Fluent Flow English Podcast. Have you ever watched native speakers answer in English so fast while you are still stuck translating in your head? You understand the words, you know the grammar, but when it's your turn to speak, everything slows down. In this episode, I want to show you the real reason this happens and how to train your brain to respond more like a native, even if you're still at a basic level. Today, we're going to talk about what actually happens inside your mind when you translate, why this makes speaking feel heavy and stressful, and how to switch from translation mode to English thinking mode step by step. I'll walk you through a simple structure you can follow for the next 30 days, real stories from learners just like you, and practical habits you can use in your normal day without extra study time. By the end of this episode, you'll know exactly how to start thinking in English more naturally, so you can speak with more confidence and less fear. Let me ask you something. When you're in a conversation and someone asks you a question in English, what happens first in your brain? Most learners tell me the same thing. They translate the question into their native language, understand it, think of an answer in their native language, and then translate it back into English. But here's the problem. By the time you finish all this translation, the conversation has already moved on.
The native speaker is waiting for your response, and you're still stuck in your head doing mental gymnastics. This is what I call the translation trap, and it's the biggest reason why learners feel slow and frustrated when speaking English. Now, let's talk about what actually happens in your brain during this process. Your brain has to do multiple tasks at the same time. First, it processes the English sounds and converts them into meaning. Then it translates that meaning into your native language. After that, it formulates a response in your native language. And finally, it translates everything back into English words. That's 4 different operations happening in your brain simultaneously. Your brain is working overtime, and that's why you feel tired after speaking for just a few minutes. Native speakers don't do any of this translation. When someone speaks to them, their brain goes directly from sound to meaning to response, all in English. Here's where most learners get stuck. They think translation is necessary. They believe they have to understand English through their native language first. But that's not true at all. Your brain is incredibly flexible and adaptable. It can learn to process English directly without needing translation as a middleman. The problem is that most traditional English teaching methods reinforce this translation habit. Teachers translate words, textbooks have translations, and learners get comfortable with this approach, so they never learn to think differently.
But here's the beautiful thing. Your brain is plastic. It can change. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine you see the word excited, and you think of the translation in your native language. But what if instead your brain created a connection like this? Excited equals feeling very happy and eager about something. See the difference? In the first case, your brain is translating. In the second case, your brain is understanding English directly in English. This approach is what we need to build, and it's absolutely possible for anyone. So now that you understand the translation trap, the question is, how do I break free? That's what we're going to cover in the next topic. So now that you understand the translation trap, let's talk about how to actually build English thinking in your brain. And the key is understanding that thinking in English doesn't happen all at once. It happens in layers. Think of it like building a house. You start with the foundation, then the walls, then the roof. English thinking works the same way. There are 3 layers, and you need to build them in order. The first layer is words. The second layer is phrases. And the third layer is sentences.
Most learners skip the first two layers and try to jump straight to thinking in full sentences. That's why they struggle so much. The first layer is all about individual words. This is where you start training your brain to connect English words directly to their meaning without translation. For example, when you see the word happy, instead of translating it to your native language, you think of the feeling itself. You think of a smile, laughter, joy. You create a direct connection between the word and the emotion or concept it represents. Once your brain learns to do this with individual words, everything else becomes easier. You're essentially teaching your brain that English words have meaning on their own, without needing translation. Now, the second layer is phrases. Once you're comfortable with individual words, your brain starts combining them into small phrases. For example, instead of thinking happy as a single word, you start thinking I am happy, or so happy, or really happy. Your brain is now processing multiple words together as a unit. Phrases have their own meaning that's different from just adding up the individual words. For instance, break the ice doesn't mean to literally break ice. It means to start a conversation with someone you don't know. Your brain learns these phrases as complete units, not as individual words that need to be translated. The third and final layer is sentences. This is where you're thinking in complete thoughts, complete ideas, complete conversations. By this point, your brain has already learned thousands of words and phrases, so combining them into sentences feels natural. You're not translating anymore. You're not thinking about grammar rules. You're just thinking, and the English comes out naturally. This is the level where fluency happens.
This is where you can have real conversations without pausing to think about what you're saying. With the right approach, you can progress through these three layers much faster than you think. So, now that you understand the three layers, you might be wondering, how do I actually build these layers? That's exactly what we're going to cover in the next topic. Now let's talk about one of the biggest myths in language learning, immersion. Many learners believe that the only way to think in English is to move to an English-speaking country and be surrounded by native speakers all the time. Maybe you've thought this too. You imagine yourself in New York or London and think, if I lived there, my English would be perfect. But just being in an English-speaking country does not automatically make you think in English. There are people who live abroad for years and still translate in their heads every single day. The real problem is not where you live, but how your brain uses English. You can be in your home country and still create a strong English environment for your mind. On the other hand, you can live in the United States and spend almost your whole day speaking your native language, watching TV in your language, and thinking in your language. In that case, your brain will not switch to English mode, even if the street signs are in English. So immersion is not just about geography, it's about mental immersion, how much English your brain processes every day and how actively you interact with that English. Think about it like this. Imagine two learners. Anna lives in her home country, but spends 1 hour every day listening to English podcasts, watching videos in English, reading short texts, and talking to herself in English. Carlos lives abroad, but he works with people from his own country, speaks his native language at home, and only uses English for quick, basic situations. Who do you think will start thinking in English faster? In most cases, it's Anna, not Carlos. Anna is training her brain daily to stay in English mode, while Carlos is still living mostly in his native language, even in another country. Immersion, in the end, is something you create with your habits, not with a plane ticket. So instead of waiting for the perfect moment to move abroad, start building your English world where you are right now. Fill small parts of your day with English, your commute, your shower, your lunch break. Use English for music, podcasts, short videos, and simple messages to yourself. Little by little, your brain will stop seeing English as a school subject and start seeing it as part of your real life. And when English becomes part of your daily routine, thinking in English stops being a distant dream and starts becoming your new normal. In the next topic, I'll show you how to turn this idea into a clear 30-day plan to rewire your brain step by step. Now it's time to turn all these ideas into action. Thinking in English is not magic, it's training. And one of the best ways to train your brain is to follow a clear plan for a limited time. In this topic, I want to give you a simple 30-day challenge to rewire your brain step by step. You don't need to study for hours. You just need short, focused moments every day where your brain is fully in English mode. Think of this as a workout plan, not for your body, but for your English brain. Here's how the challenge works. Every day for the next 30 days, you choose 3 small moments of your day and turn them into English time. For example, 5 minutes in the morning when you wake up, 5 minutes in the afternoon during a break, and 5 minutes at night before sleep. In each of these moments, you think only in English. No translation allowed. You can describe what you're doing, how you're feeling, or what you plan to do next. The goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to keep your brain in English mode even for a short time. To make this easier, you can use simple prompts. In the morning, you can ask yourself in English, "What is my plan for today?" and answer in simple sentences. In the afternoon, you can think, "What have I done so far?" and describe your day in a few lines. At night, you can review your day. What was the best part of my day? Or what did I learn today? You can say these things out loud or write them in a small English journal. The important thing is that your brain is not jumping between languages. For those minutes, it's only English in, English out. The secret of this 30-day challenge is consistency, not intensity. Even if you feel your English is very basic, that's okay. Use simple words, simple sentences, and repeat phrases if you need to. What really matters is that your brain starts to expect English at certain times of the day. After 1 or 2 weeks, you'll notice something interesting. Your brain will start to switch to English automatically during those moments, even before you try. Some days will be harder. You might feel tired, busy, or unmotivated. On those days, do a mini version of the challenge. Just 2 or 3 sentences in English about anything. The point is not to skip the day completely. When you keep the chain unbroken for 30 days, your brain learns that English is part of your life, not just a school subject. And when that happens, thinking in English stops feeling like a special exercise and starts feeling natural. In the next topic, I'll share some real stories of learners who tried this kind of challenge and what changed for them, so you can see how this works in real life. Earlier, I mentioned a 30-day challenge, but you might be thinking, does this really work in real life? So let me share a few quick stories of learners who tried something very similar. The first one is Marta, a busy mom who always said she had no time for English. She decided to use just 10 to 15 minutes a day to think in English while cooking and washing the dishes. At first, she could only say very simple sentences, like, "I am cutting vegetables," or "The water is hot." But after a few weeks, she noticed that English sentences started to appear in her mind more naturally, without translation. Another learner, Daniel worked in an office and felt too shy to speak English with his co-workers. He started a small habit. During his commute, he listened to slow English podcasts and repeated short sentences in his head. Then he began to imagine short conversations with his future self speaking confidently in meetings. After 1 month, he told me that when his boss suddenly asked him something in English, the answer just came out. Not perfect, but fast and clear. He said it was the first time he felt his brain ready in English instead of frozen. The third story is about Aisha, a student who loved K-pop and dramas. She decided to turn her hobbies into English thinking practice. She changed the subtitles to English, paused scenes, and described what was happening in her own simple words. He is angry. She is nervous. They are surprised. She also wrote one short sentence every day in an English notebook about how she felt. Little by little, her inner voice stopped using her native language and started using English when she thought about her favorite shows. These stories have one thing in common. None of these learners moved to another country or studied for hours. They simply created small, daily moments where their brain had no choice but to think in English. At first, it felt strange and slow, but with repetition, it became more natural. And this is the key idea I want you to remember. Your brain changes when you use English in real situations, even if those situations are small and private.
In the next topic, I'll show you a powerful shortcut you can add to all of this to speed up your progress even more. Now, let me give you a shortcut that almost nobody talks about, but it can multiply all the progress we've been talking about using English-only tools. Many learners still depend on bilingual dictionaries and translation apps. They look at an English word, press a button, and see the meaning in their native language. It feels fast, but it keeps their brain stuck in translation mode. Instead, I want you to start using English-to-English resources as your default. This small change forces your brain to connect English with English, not English with your native language. For example, instead of searching for a translation, you can use a simple learner's dictionary that explains words in easy English. If you look up the word nervous, you might see a definition like worried or afraid about something that may happen. Now your brain is building connections between English words. Nervous, worried, afraid, happen. No translation, just meaning. You can also check example sentences. She feels nervous before an exam. Every time you do this, you are training your brain to stay inside English. You can do the same with other tools. When you don't know how to say something, instead of translating from your language, try to explain it in simple English.
For example, if you forget the word refrigerator, you can think the cold box where I keep food. If you don't remember appointment, you can say a time when I meet the doctor. This technique is powerful because it keeps your thinking in English even when your vocabulary is not perfect. It teaches your brain to search for English solutions instead of translation shortcuts. Another great shortcut is to send voice notes or short messages to yourself in English. Open a notes app or a chat with yourself and record a 30-second message about your day, your plans, or your feelings. Don't worry about mistakes. You're not making a speech. You're training your brain. When you listen again, you will hear your own voice, thinking in English. This creates a strong feedback loop. You think in English, you hear English, and your brain starts to accept that English is a natural way for you to express your thoughts. When you combine these English-only tools with the daily habits we talked about before, your progress becomes much faster. You're no longer just studying English, you're living in English, even if you never leave your country. Your brain starts to trust English as a complete system, not as a code that always needs translation. In the next topic, we'll talk about some common mistakes that can slow down this progress so you can avoid them and keep your brain moving in the right direction. Now that you know what to do, let's talk honestly about what can slow you down. There are a few common mistakes that quietly block your progress, even when you are putting in effort. The first mistake is trying to be perfect every time you think or speak in English. Many learners stop in the middle of a sentence because they are not sure about a word or a grammar rule. They correct themselves again and again in their head. The result? Silence. Your brain learns that speaking English is dangerous because you might be wrong, so it prefers to stay quiet. The second mistake is jumping back to translation every time something feels difficult. Maybe you start a sentence in English, but the moment you can't find one word, you switch to your native language in your mind. If you always do this, your brain never learns to stay in English during hard moments. It's like leaving the gym every time the exercise becomes a little heavy. The muscles never grow. To train your brain, you sometimes need to stay with the discomfort for a few seconds and try to explain your idea in simple English instead of escaping to translation. Another very common mistake is passive input only. Some learners watch hours of English videos, but they never repeat, speak, or write anything themselves. They feel like they're improving, but their brain is only practicing recognition, not production. Thinking in English is an active skill. It's like playing an instrument. You can't learn piano just by listening to music. You need to touch the keys. So when you listen or watch something in English, try to pause and say one sentence in your own words. The fourth mistake is inconsistency. You study a lot for 3 days, then stop for a week. Every time you come back, it feels like starting again from zero. Your brain is like a muscle. It prefers short, regular practice instead of long sessions followed by long breaks. That's why the 30-day challenge works so well. Even on busy days, doing just a few sentences keeps the habit alive. Finally, a big mistake is comparing yourself to other learners all the time. When you see someone speaking fast on social media, you might think, "I'll never be like that," and lose motivation. Your job is not to think, "Am I as good as them?" but to ask, "Am I a little better than I was last month?" If you avoid these traps and focus on your own journey, your brain will have the space it needs to grow. In the next topic, we'll put everything together into a simple daily routine you can follow without stress. Now, let's put everything together into a simple daily routine you can actually follow. Think of your day as a series of small windows where English can fit naturally. You don't need 3 hours of study. You just need to connect English to moments that already exist. For example, you can use mornings to plan your day in English, afternoons to describe what has happened so far, and evenings to review and reflect.
Each block can be just 5 to 10 minutes, but they should be intentional. In the morning, as soon as you wake up, take a minute to stretch and think in English. Today I will, and list 2 or 3 things. While you make coffee or breakfast, name objects and actions. I am boiling water. I am making toast. I am checking my phone. This is your warm-up. You're telling your brain, hey, we are going to use English today. It doesn't have to be deep or complex. The goal is to turn English on. In the afternoon, choose one small moment to check in with yourself in English. It could be during lunch, on the bus, or while walking. Ask, what have I done so far? And answer in simple sentences. I answered emails. I had a meeting. I was tired, but I finished my tasks. You can also describe what you see around you. The street is busy. The weather is cloudy. This keeps your brain in contact with English during your normal life, not only when you are studying. At night, before going to sleep, do a short reflection in English. You can think silently, speak out loud, or write 3 lines in a notebook. Answer questions like, what was the best part of my day? What was difficult today? And what am I grateful for? This not only practices English, but also creates a calm mental habit that your brain will start to expect. Over time, your thoughts at the end of the day will naturally come in English more often. If you follow this routine, you're giving your brain multiple chances every day to think in English in different situations, planning, describing, and reflecting. You are not waiting for a perfect study session, you are building a lifestyle. And the beautiful part is that you can adjust the routine to your reality. Maybe you add a podcast while washing dishes, or a quick shadowing practice while walking. In the conclusion, I'll show you how all of this fits into your long-term journey and why you should celebrate every small step you take. We've covered a lot in this episode, so let's take a moment to connect the dots. You discovered why translation makes your brain work twice as hard and keeps you feeling slow and insecure. You saw how native speakers don't use translation at all. They go directly from sound to meaning to response. You learned about the 3 layers of English thinking: words, phrases, and sentences, and how they build on each other like the foundation, walls, and roof of a house. We also talked about why physical immersion is not a magic solution, and how mental immersion is what really changes your brain. With small daily habits, like naming objects, talking to yourself, and using English during simple activities, you can train your mind to stay in English mode no matter where you live. The 30-day challenge gives you a clear structure to follow, so you're not just hoping to get better, you have a plan. Through the real stories of Marta, Daniel, and Aisha, you saw that you don't need a perfect life or unlimited time to think in English. You just need small, consistent moments where your brain has no choice but to use English. You learned a powerful shortcut with English-only tools and English-to-English explanations, which slowly disconnect your thinking from translation. And you became aware of the traps that can slow you down, like perfectionism, passive learning, or comparing yourself to others. Most importantly, you now have a simple daily routine you can actually follow. Plan your day in English, check in with yourself in the afternoon, and reflect at night. These are not extra tasks. They are new ways to live the life you already have, but in English. If you stick with this,
Even on imperfect days, your brain will start to treat English as a natural language for your thoughts, not just a school subject. So here is my final message to you. Thinking in English is not reserved for talented people or those who live abroad. It's a skill you build, one small thought at a time. Be patient with yourself, celebrate tiny wins, and remember that every sentence you think in English is a brick in the new house you're building in your mind. Keep going, keep practicing, and soon you'll notice that English is not something outside of you anymore. It's part of who you are as a communicator. In a moment, I'll give you a quick challenge and a special invitation so you can continue this journey with us. Before you go, I want to give you a quick challenge and a small request. Your challenge is this. For the next 7 days, choose at least one moment every day to think only in English. It can be in the shower, on the bus, or while you're cooking. Keep it simple, but keep it consistent. And if this episode helped you, please support our work by subscribing to Fluent Flow English Podcast and turning on the notifications so you don't miss the next episodes. Also, if you want to go deeper into this topic of thinking in English, I highly recommend our previous episode, where we guide you through practical sentences and real-life situations to train your mind step by step. It's a perfect next step after this conversation. Tell me in the comments, which part of today's episode are you going to try first? I would love to hear your experience, and maybe even use your story in a future episode.